Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast as we continue the conversation surrounding the NBA free agency. We got the news the other day that LeBron James is signing a new contract with the Lakers. This was pretty much no surprise. He declined his player option last week, but was always expected to come back to the Lakers, and he does on a 2-year deal worth $104 million. Now, this includes a no-trade clause. Actually, funny enough, it's being thrown around there a little bit. One of two contracts in the NBA with a no-trade clause, him and Bradley Beal. So kind of an obscure little grouping there, but no trade clause on the deal, and he also added a player option for next season, which doesn't surprise me. I know some people were because there was a 3-year max contract that he was eligible for, but at this point, it sounds like, to me at least, the reporting has been that LeBron is going to try and sort of go back to his old ways almost in terms of contract negotiations and do these types of 1+1 contracts where he gives himself an out with a player option in the following offseason if he chooses to do so. And it's a strategy that is probably a little bit risky for the average NBA player, but of course, we're talking about LeBron James, and he has been able to bet on himself continuously through his career, and it's always played out for them. So don't be surprised when he is ultimately a free agent again next season. And it's actually interesting, I think even more so, because in the past, LeBron has talked about how he shouldn't be taking pay cuts, and the fact that it almost messes up the entire market if LeBron is playing for less money, that is. And it's something that he has been against throughout his career, but he was at least open to it this past year, not taking the entire max contract, but it was never a guarantee. It was a matter of, is there actually going to be somebody out there on the market that is worth instead, taking some money off of his own contract to make sure the Lakers can go out and get. And this year's free agent class just really ultimately wasn't all that well-rounded to the point where there were going to be many players. I think that, there was a list of guys that were out there. DeMar DeRozan, who is still available, but obviously that's off the table now. Klay Thompson was on the list, I believe, and I think I heard Jonas Valanciunas was as well. I'm not 100% sure on that, but there really weren't all that many options. Obviously, Paul George in free agency too, but it didn't seem like the Lakers were ever really a possibility, and I don't think that they would have been able to fit both of them on the books, but, I think that just the options weren't really there for them with the Lakers, and, it's past us now, so I don't want to retroactively go back and talk about fits that we already understand are never going to happen, but I expressed some concerns with DeRozan in LA. I don't think I would have minded it to some degree, but, DeRozan isn't particularly great defensively or as a three-point shooter, and those are both the main things that the Lakers need. Now, I am of the belief that any team in the NBA can get you a bucket is a player that is probably worth having. Now, obviously, mindset and, the basketball IQ part of it is a part of that conversation, but DeRozan, I also just think plays very unselfishly, so I think that it wasn't the perfect fit, but I can understand, the concern, and I can understand LeBron not taking the pay cut for DeRozan in this type of an instance, especially after some of the other players that were potentially on the list already signed elsewhere. And, it's interesting to consider that maybe LeBron could do a similar act next offseason where he takes a pay cut to open up, a possibility for another player the next year. And we're a year out, so I'm sure there are going to be contract extensions and such that get done in the next year. But if you do, at least as we sit here on July 4th and look ahead to next year, any of the players from the 2021 draft class that are not under contract extensions will be restricted free agents. Now, restricted free agency can be a little bit of a dicey game to get into, especially if you're a contending team. But, we already know that the Rockets aren't planning on extending Jalen Green or Alperen Şengün. There are others like Evan Mobley, Franz Wagner, and whoever else is out there, just as some possibilities. Again, we'll see how that progresses as the year moves along here. But some other interesting all-star caliber names, such as Jalen Brunson. I know, long shot. I'm not saying that any of these are definitive locks to go to the Lakers, but Jalen Brunson, Lauri Markkanen, Brandon Ingram, Julius Randle, Jamal Murray, Kyrie Irving. That's probably the one that I am most interested in. Now, seems like Kyrie and Luka have a good thing going on in Dallas right now. There's been a little bit of buzz about LeBron possibly to Dallas, so who knows? He just got his friend and JJ Redick hired as the head coach. Obviously, he's not the GM, but we know a little bit at least what goes on behind the scenes there in terms of how much power LeBron has. But then also getting Bronny drafted and having this fully guaranteed contract. It's got to be one of the most expensive second-rounder draft contracts in NBA history. Not that I mean, it's kind of funny, again, especially when you have ESPN sort of telling us to not consider it nepotism and that it's actually a good thing. I like that Bronny's in the league, but we can also acknowledge he's not getting this fully guaranteed contract if he's not playing for his father's team, and his father is LeBron James. So, whatever. Let that be what it is. But, it's interesting what the future of LeBron would be. It seems like he's happy just hanging out in LA, or I shouldn't say hanging out, but living in LA, doing his thing, having his hand in the Hollywood scene as well. And it feels like he wants to go out with the Lakers. Now, again, we'll see what happens there, but that's probably where I would put it at right now. But again, a lot of things that can take place over the course of a year. But I really don't think that LeBron should receive any criticism about not taking this pay cut. That was an idea that he floated out there, understanding obviously how much attention that would be getting. And that now the fact that he doesn't, I don't think that can be held against him by any means. But it is interesting the fact that this new deal of his puts the Lakers just about $1 million over that second luxury tax apron. And that's where there should maybe be some reconsideration, considering all of the other restrictions it puts on the Lakers in terms of their roster flexibility. You talk about they can't pick up any buyout players. The trades become much more complicated. You can't aggregate contracts of smaller salary numbers to go out and get one bigger one. And I think it's almost maybe just a little bit important, especially for LeBron, who obviously one of the greatest players of all time, but has also been pretty vocal at times throughout his career about his discontent for the job that his teams have done in terms of putting adequate talent around him. With LeBron taking this deal, it removes a lot of possibilities for them, and there really isn't, in this new era of the current collective bargaining agreement, there isn't just this figure it out mentality, because they're just restricted in so many ways that it puts the Lakers in a tough position. And ultimately, I've said this before, I do think that because it's the Lakers, and it's LeBron James, that we have this expectation of they should be doing everything in their power to win. Yes, while I agree with that, I really don't think they are that close to still contending. And, this should be a playoff team that can win around, maybe. I mean, we just saw them make the Western Conference Finals a couple years ago. And I would like to think that they have made some roster improvements since then. Now, we'll see, Gabe Vincent, obviously, last year was a non-factor because of all the injuries he was dealing with. But hopefully getting a full year of him can be worth something from the three-point line, as the Lakers really struggled shooting last season. They lost Jared Vanderbilt about halfway through the year. I want to say it was during that Celtics game when LeBron and Anthony Davis were out. This was right around the trade deadline, and he is, their premier perimeter defender, that they lost him as well. And drafting Dalton Knecht, who I think was a great fit for them and is going to play very well into a system. I think that JJ Redick is going to have a ton of fun sort of scheming out things for him, developing him as an off-the-ball option, because obviously at Tennessee he was a lot more hands-on and he was doing a lot of the creating, which can definitely be important for the Lakers next year, but he's going to also have to be comfortable at this next level of not being the guy. Coming from a small school where he started off in the Division II, and I'm blanking on the school that he was at before he transferred to Tennessee, but being the number one option there and how that's going to translate into the NBA, I think he'll be fine. I have to imagine that at his age and with his experiences, he understands that, 3 years ago he wasn't looking at being an NBA player, and now he's here, and that he's going to buy into whatever the Lakers need of him. So, the Lakers can be, I would say, they can be better than they were last year. I don't know if I'd go marginally, but I don't think they're going to be significantly better. And I think that there are a number of teams in the West that are going to continue to get better as well. And, looking at the standings from last year, how many teams could they possibly overcome in terms of the standings at the end of the regular season? Phoenix Suns could definitely be on the table. The Clippers, after losing Paul George, is a possibility. But outside of that, I'm not totally sure, and there are probably some teams that were below them that could at least make a push to be better than them as a regular season team. So we'll see. Again, I think the expectations should be lowered for the Lakers, but they're going to be in the mix for a lot of the season. So we'll see how that all plays out. But obviously, we're still waiting on a number of different moves to fully come into place, and some of those could include some Western Conference teams in that conversation, such as the Sacramento Kings, who have been linked to a couple different players in DeMar DeRozan and Lauri Markkanen. Not just them, the Warriors have been on the Markkanen rumors as well. So we are going to be diving into the specific cases of the rumors surrounding those two players in DeRozan and Markkanen, and talk about whether or not they could have an impact on next season. So we're going to be diving into that. But first, going to be taking a quick break here. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back.